and a parable from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14, verses 15 through 24.
One of those with him at table who heard all this remarked, "Blessed, then, is the one who will share the meal in the kingdom of God." So Jesus said, "A man was once giving a great dinner to which he had invited many guests. At the time for the dinner, he sent his servant to inform those invited, 'Please come now, for things are at last prepared.' But they all at once began to decline. The first one said to him, 'I have bought a field, and I have to go out and inspect it. Please convey my regrets.' Another said, 'I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am on my way to try them out. Please convey my regrets.' Yet another said, 'I have just been married, and for this reason I cannot come.' When the servant came back, he reported all this to his master. The master of the house became angry and said to his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of town and bring in here the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' Again, the servant said, 'Sir, what you ordered has been done, and there is still room.' Then the master said to the servant, 'Go out then into the highways and the hedgerows and make people come in so that my house will be filled. For I tell you, not one of those men who were originally invited shall taste of my dinner.'"
This reading from the Gospel of Luke, we are reading those special passages which are just in Gospel of Luke. And this one is in some way special, even though it is preserved in a number of other Gospels. And we will hear those other passages today as well. But they are with a twist. I would claim that Luke is special in a way Luke treats this plot, well-known story at that time. And first, I will ask now again to read from Jerusalem Talmud. I will take it to Sarah over here. She will read to us.
A rich tax collector, Mayan, who had done many evil deeds, died and was given a noble funeral. Work stopped throughout the city. The entire population wished to escort him to his splendid tomb. The question is, how could God be so unjust to allow this? The answer is that although Bar Mayan had by no means lived a pious life, he nevertheless had done one singular good deed, and he died doing it. Thus, his death had ensured that his last good deed could not be undone by any further evil deeds. It was appropriately rewarded by receiving his noble funeral. And what was the good deed of this tax collector, Bar Mayan? He had prepared a banquet for the city councilors, but they refused to come and eat with the evil man. To show his contempt for them, Bar Mayan invited all the poor, the sick, and the beggars to attend instead. As he presided over this memorable feast, death overtook him, and people forgot all his evil deeds because of his last and only good deed.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is most likely, dear friends, and we heard that last Sunday in a little broader context. This is the origin of this story about the feast which is prepared for someone else. They turn it down, and so the host is going and inviting people from the streets, and so that the food would not go bad, would not spoil. And at the same time doing a good deed. It is clearly declared there. So this is the oldest, most likely the oldest version of this story. And you can also hear there that kind of, how would I call it? Civil snub. That he is doing it in spite. So he is doing good deed in spite. But it is still a good deed. And, you know, occasionally that happens in our lives. Am I right? That is how it is. Even an angry resentment, sometimes people can do a good thing. And so this is our historical and ethical roots of this story. And we can wait until Sarah is ready to read again. No, that's another observation that, you know, if you have a church around tables and you are all eating, we can always wait until you swallow your last morsel, or, and you know, there is no pressure, there is no timeline, everyone is more relaxed. And you know, that is what we lost when we kind of got into that regimental kind of way of being a church. One thing follows the other thing, and oh, there is and harsh voices like something changed. You know, there was a hymn in a wrong order or something like that. No. When we are around the tables, anything can happen. You know, someone might spill juice or wine, or so dogs are running here. That's just. But now we will go into an Gospel of Matthew reading from the chapter 22.
The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, "Tell those who have been invited, 'Look, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they made light of it and went away, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad, so the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'"
Thank you. This is most likely the second oldest version of this story from church community of Matthew. And in that community, Ed is coming, so we will invite Ed to come and join us around the table. Over here is still a chair. Come here. Yeah. And have some wraps or some cookies. And if you want, the coffee is over there, and a seltzer is there as well. You see, I told you, it is more relaxed kind of setting if we are around the tables. When someone comes, we need to introduce. So we are reading that story of a great feast in Matthew. And have you noticed that snub, which we heard from Talmud, that snub is getting really serious. And it is not any longer a snap in a small Palestinian or Jewish village or small town. Here it is about the king giving the feast, wedding feast. And when they decline a king got really mad. And we hear even, because those are like imperial politics, they are even killing his messengers. And then king sends like a punishing expedition and burns their city. That is really, really kind of very departure from that. But you need to understand this is said in Matthew congregation. And in that congregation, he saw it as an eschatological or apocalyptic vision about the kingdom of God. And you know that there are similar parables in Gospel of Matthew, especially about a vineyard, where the owner is sending the messengers to collect the proceeds of the vineyard, and they are kind of acting very badly. That is an allegory about the prophets trying to remind people, and then sending even his son, we hear from other parables, and they killing him. And so that is a vision that's said after Easter, of course. And it is an allegory about the existence of community of faith, knowing what happened to Jesus and knowing that God is the one who is inviting. And it is reminding us about the seriousness of that. You might very often, with this parable, there is that story, people are really worried about that one person who comes from the street and is thrown out because does not have the proper attire. Again, it needs to be taken allegorically here. It is not that he needs to be in the best dress. It is a reminder that if you are joining the community of faith, it puts certain requirements on people. It is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called cheap grace. There is plenty of grace available in the community of faith. But there are boundaries, there are limits. And those who think that they can do whatever they want and they will always be forgiven. And there'll be a grace available to them, no matter what. This is like that limit set to that. We are not preaching cheap grace. Love of God is open to everyone, but don't even dare to abuse it. So that is behind that. Now, so that is eschatological or apocalyptic feast in Matthew. And we go to Luke, and we heard that earlier. Thank you, Karen, for reading it for us. In Luke, I would think that Luke is again taking it from this eschatological apocalyptic spheres down to earth and little closer to Jesus's setting, where Jesus is talking about what we are, or I am inviting people to every Sunday, to open commensality. That everyone is welcomed, as we were singing in that first hymn. Everyone is welcome here. We are building a house where everyone can belong. And in that setting, it has also social dimension, that no matter of your social class, everyone is welcomed here. And that is also a reminder for the church, because, you know, just looking around the tables, I think that we are more or less of the same class. And that is a task for us to reach out and to serve. And I think that this community is trying to do that on Thursdays, and definitely on Maundy Thursdays. we are welcoming people from the street and are being joined by those whom we serve on Thursday. And the last Maundy Thursday was probably my greatest enjoyment, when we were actually joined by a great deal of those we serve and who are normally waiting on a street, on a sidewalk, and we were all here eating together, almost like we are eating now. And we are quite close to that dream right now. And just don't hesitate and eat. You don't need to pay attention that close. But there is still something lacking. That divine vision is really that we would really pull everyone inside and welcome them here around this table. And so it is that open commensality message. And I would think that it is closest to Jesus' intention, what we know about Jesus. Jesus feeding other people, Jesus making miracles of multiplying breads and fish, or turning water into wine. You know, in Presbyterian church, I think that the session would get quite upset with me if we suddenly started to serve wine. But this is the story which is closest to Jesus's ethos. And then we have one more story there, and I'll take it to Karen again. It is not in a Bible, even though it is gospel. It is extra-biblical gospel of Thomas.
Jesus says, a person had a guest, and when he had prepared the dinner, he sent his servant so that he might invite the guest. He came to the first and said to him, "My master invites you." He said, "I have bills against some merchants. They are coming to me this evening. I will go and give instructions to them. Excuse me from the dinner." He came to another and said to him, "My master has invited you." He said to him, "I have bought a house and I have been called away for a day. I will not have time." He went to another and said to him, "My master invites you." He said to him, "My friend is going to marry, and I am the one who is going to prepare the meal. I will not be able to come. Excuse me from the dinner." He came to another and said to him, "My master invites you." He said to him, "I have bought a village. Since I am going to collect the rent, I will not be able to come. Excuse me." The servant went away. He said to his master, "Those whom you invited to dinner have asked to be excused." The master said to his servant, "Go out on the roads. Bring back whomever you find, so that they might have dinner. Dealers and merchants will not enter the places of my Father."
So this is the fourth version of this story. You can see that it is identical story, but it is again slightly different. That's most likely the youngest of those stories. Gospel of Thomas was written under the influence of Gnosticism, which was a movement in Hellenistic times and partly in the church, which concentrated just on spiritual. And you can see it in this parable. It is told, especially that last sentence there, which is saying, merchants and bankers, or whatever it is, are not going to enter the kingdom. I'm now paraphrasing it from memory. You have it in your bulletins there. And that is the main concern of the people in that stream of Christianity, reminding everyone that true meaning is spiritual, and that you need to be aware of getting entangled in the world and in its machinations, in its operations. Try to focus on spiritual. When it became overblown, church rejected this teaching because they said we need to care for the poor. That was our previous version of this message. You know, like caring for just souls of everyone while they are dying of hunger is wrong. But first impulse in this understanding from Gospel of Thomas is actually genuinely correct, like saying, you know, be aware of getting entangled in this world. And so Gospel of Thomas is lifting up those who reject it, you know, and warning us, don't be like them. Don't sell out that cheaply your soul to material things of this world. While Luke, if you notice, is lifting up those who came in and saying everyone is welcome there. So let them come in and care for those people, like we tried to mention here earlier. So these are like two parts which need to be kept in balance. And just looking at ourselves and being honest with ourselves, friends, that Gospel of Thomas is almost like written to us. You know, I don't want to make us into Gnostics. Far from it. You know that social justice is very important for me and for our church and for the session of this church. But at the same time, being aware that we should not get ensnared in the worries of this world is very important message. So those are these 4 different versions. One is historical and ethical roots of this story in Jerusalem Talmud. Then in Matthew, eschatological or apocalyptic feast, explaining to us the broader spectrum and what that open commensality means, that this is just a foretaste of things to come in the heavenly kingdom. Then with Luke, highlighting the social care and open door policy for the church, like what we have in our elevator, that yes, we do have walls and roof in this church, but they are there only to protect us from the elements, not to keep people out. And finally, reminding us that we should really pay attention to spiritual rather than our own personal material gains. And those things kind of come together in this one story. And you see that Luke is trying to bring its own, completely different from those other versions, voice. And Luke's voice is really a voice which is social justice oriented. I don't know whether you noticed when we are reading all those, looking and lifting up women is one of the themes of Gospel of Luke, and lifting up and highlighting the social tensions in their society, and lifting up to the attention of the church those poor and those in need, that they belong to church and church has responsibility for them. That is a special tone of Gospel of Luke.